listening to America First Radio. Here is your host, Paul Adams.
Welcome back, everybody. Happy New Year once again, and this is the first episode of 2017. Let's hope this is going to be an eventful, fruitful year for everybody. The theme of this episode is the inverted pyramid. This is where power devolves back to the people from the elite. Here's an example of what the pyramid looks like. We have now discovered, thanks to Guccifer 2.0, that TARP funds, public funds which were meant to bail out banks, the too big to fail banks, some of these funds were diverted by way of fees or commissions to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee and to several politicians, including Nancy Pelosi, Barney Frank, Carolyn Maloney, Chris Van Hollen, and the list goes on. See, with transparency comes accountability, and with accountability comes the empowerment of the people. Let us never forget that this is, after all, a government that is of, by, and for the people, the employers. So we got it right here. I'm looking at all these numbers. It's a chart, and the banks had received tens of billions of dollars in bailout funds, and accordingly, some of the movers and shakers, I suppose, got their service fees. We're going to talk a little bit more about this inversion of the pyramid as we go on. So there I was on Twitter checking my notifications, and what do I see? I see Sean Hannity is now following me. Thank you, Mr. Hannity. I'm also being followed by Dinesh D'Souza and by Alex Jones Podcasts, and one of my tweets was retweeted by Lou Dobbs back when we were in the fray of the election, when things were getting very hot and heavy. Ladies and gentlemen, we are still at maximum red alert. There was a very interesting conversation between Alex Jones and Dr. Steve Pieczenik on YouTube regarding the State of the Union, where we are at this point of the transition. You need to go to YouTube and check it out. Things are still fluid and furious. There's also a great interview between Julian Assange and Sean Hannity that you need to listen to. The Luciferian lying scum that likes to play dirty politics, they are scrambling for the nearest exits. The DNC is now an acronym for Do Not Call. Now, strangely enough, I woke up the other morning with an image of a 2-minute timer taken away. What could that possibly mean? Do we have 2 months? Do we have 2 years? Let's take a look here at some of the events that are leading up to what I call a great showdown. Bibi Netanyahu has now ironclad information that the Obama White House pushed the anti-Israel UN resolution. What does that mean for Mr. Obama? Well, for the globalists who control Obama, it just means that Obama, like every other useful tool they control, is expendable. He's not irreplaceable. He is not indispensable. And one scenario to kickstart martial law would be to pop him, blame it on Russia. Who else has Obama ticked off more than Russia? And that would be the perfect setup for a civil war. Trump certainly hasn't ticked off Russia. And Trump just met with Obama to discuss the transition and said he's a great guy. Obama is also known to be anti-American, and that means they could pin it on a zealous patriot, someone they could drug and brainwash. And I know this now, what I'm about to explain here is going to sound a little bit cryptic, but stay with me. If you look at some of the Denver airport murals, you will notice two things. There's a dove that's being pierced with a sword, and in another scene, we see the whole world weeping over the death of a leopard, who some have identified as Obama because he is half black, half white. So let's play out this scenario. Bear in mind, the end game of the globalists is chaos, total and utter mayhem, so they can roll out their version of peace, their new world order. And if you haven't heard already, they do talk about the new world order a lot. Let's hear a few world figures talk about the new world order, just so you don't think we are making this up as we go along. You will recognize their voices.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
It is a big idea, a new world order, a world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order.
After 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order.
There is a chance for the President of the United States to use this disaster to carry out what his father, a phrase his father used, I think, only once, and hasn't been used since, and that is a new world order.
So that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
Within the next 4 years, we will see the emergence of a new international order.
The beginning of a new international order.
The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. It isn't just a crisis.
It's about the future of Europe and a new world order.
There's a need for a new world order, but it has different characteristics in different parts of the world.
But today, with Asia already outproducing Europe, India and China are clearly becoming part of our new order.
We are now facing a common challenge. And the challenge is how to build a world order for the first time in history on a global basis.
So, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, a new world is emerging. It is a new world order with significantly different and radically new challenges.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
Good evening, everybody. President Obama and British Prime Minister Gordon today calling for a new world order to tackle our global economic crisis.
And the president outlined his vision of a new world order in which the U.S. would participate fully.
We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see.
So I see a world order in the future with a multipolar world order.
I think a new world order is emerging, and with it the foundations of a new and progressive era of international cooperation.
But in a globalized economy, we are going to have to take global responsibilities, and there is going to have to be some semblance of global governance.
Never before has a new world order had to be assembled from so many different perceptions, or on so global a scale. Nor has any previous order had to combine the attributes of the historic balance of power system with global democratic opinion and the exploding technology of the contemporary period.
And I strongly believe India will be a central actor in the new world order.
There also exists an extraordinary opportunity to form for the first time in history a truly global society.
2009 is also the first year of global governance, with the establishment of the G20 in the middle of the financial crisis. The climate conference in Copenhagen is another step towards the global management of our planet.
New World Order is the headline in the Globe and Mail in Canada.
Is this global governance at last? Is it one world, the central bankers in charge? But aren't we all just living and dying for what the central banks do?
Of course we are. We are absolutely slaves to central banks.
In order to kickstart a new world order, there will have to be some monumental resetting. And what better time to reset the financial system than with a crash. As we know, Deutsche Bank is on the verge of collapse. Another way of resetting the financial system is by hyperinflating the dollar, which means nobody uses the dollar anymore internationally, and the dollar loses its value overnight. Of course, there's the old standby, unleashing world war, either in the Ukraine or Syria or in the Southeast Pacific. They could add civil unrest by activating ISIS sleeper cells, or even lock down Washington, D.C., leaving the states to fend for themselves. And then there's China. More on China in a minute. Let's just take a look here at what Obama did to our fleet. Aircraft carriers. There will be no U.S. Navy aircraft carriers in the Middle East or in any other ocean. They're all docked. It's the first time this has happened, that a U.S. aircraft carrier has not been in use, deployed anywhere in the world. First time since World War II. Why? Is that for the lame duck to have sitting ducks? Is that to avert any conflict? Is that to step down from any potential attack from China or Russia after Russia is provoked? I don't know what to tell you. I'm not a strategist. I will leave that to the generals. All I know is that Israel is our little brother in this tug of war, and it knows that all it has to do is call on Big Brother, good old America, if anybody gets in its way. Let's talk a little bit about Russia here. I'm going to use this allegory. Once upon a time, a thief stole the king's crown jewels and went to the king's enemies to sell them. Only what the thief didn't know was that the king's enemies were no longer the enemies of the king. They had become his friend, unbeknownst to the thief. So the king's old enemy reported to the king that his crown jewels had been stolen and that he had the thief in custody. And this is where it gets interesting. The thief complained to the king that his old enemy should not have interfered in this matter. It was none of his business. Ladies and gentlemen, the crown jewels represent the right of the American people to vote in a fair election. And we welcome anyone who will apprehend the scoundrels who try to rig the election in order to tip it either to the left or to the right. See, I don't care. I don't care who is the whistleblower at this point. All I want to know is who rigged the election. The facts are indisputable. The leadership of the DNC, in collusion with the mainstream media, tried to sabotage the election in favor of Hillary Clinton. And as justice is blind, so justice must be served. As Dinesh D'Souza said in a tweet, when the people in high places are deeply corrupt, the hacker and the whistleblower are the public's best friends. We need whistleblowers to reveal the super predators who are trying to hijack our democracy. End of story. Now, there isn't a shred of evidence that Russia hacked the election or that John Podesta's emails, which brand him as a pedophile, there's not a shred of evidence that any country had hacked and exposed the slimy, corrupt, degenerate thieves who triggered this scandal. But whoever they are, whether it be NSA insiders or outsiders, they should be awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. If someone is rigging the election, if someone is stealing the crown jewels, the people's vote, we as Americans need to find out who that person is. Come hell or high water, we need to find out and bring them to justice. There's plenty of evidence that the Democrats tried to rig the election, first by colluding with the media. What could be more egregious than that? There's evidence they stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders. There's evidence they tried to keep the electorate comfortably numb, distracted, compliant, cooperative to their vacuous narratives. There's evidence Hillary Clinton received debate questions in advance from Donna Brazile. There's further evidence that John Podesta is involved in pedophilic activities and ritualistic spirit cooking, and that Hillary Clinton approves, endorses, and takes her cues and orders from John Podesta, her campaign manager. No, those are the issues. Never mind turning the tables around or shifting focus to who hacked into the emails. That point is moot. It is irrelevant. Even if Russia had hacked into the emails, they did us a huge favor, but they didn't. It was the NSA that hacked into the DNC emails, and Podesta's emails were hacked by some 2-bit hacker who had phished his passwords. Now, speaking of the allegations that Russia had hacked the election, Putin suggested the emails unveiled true information about the Democratic Party, which was further proved by the ousting of the Democratic National Committee chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. The most important thing is the gist of the information that hackers provided to the public, he said. What is the best evidence that the hackers unveiled true information, he asked. That after the hackers showed how public opinion is manipulated inside of the Democratic Party, the chief of the Democratic National Committee quit. That is the best evidence. Now, I started following the Russian embassy on Twitter that is the London Russian embassy. And I saw this one meme showing Obama's arm throwing a boomerang to Russia marked anti-Russian sanctions. You gotta hand it to the Russians. They have imagination, creativity. The caption on that meme is, American people humiliated by its own president. Because any sanctions will boomerang. They will boomerang on Obama. Regarding Hillary's loss, the Russian embassy tweeted, "Please keep in mind that being boring to death with stale, pseudo-intellectual talk was key to undermining elite's cause of status quo." Of course, their lame duck meme wins first prize. Chose a little duckling and the word lame on top of it, and it says, President Obama expels 35 diplomats in Cold War deja vu, as everybody, including American people, will be glad to see the last of this hapless administration. If that's not a slap across the face, I don't know what it is. Then there's the meme of Putin holding his hand to his ear as he tries to listen, and he says, "We hacked your server?" You mean like with a hatchet? And then my favorite, there's the meme of Putin and Medvedev laughing. Putin is so cracked up he's wiping away tears. He's laughing so hard. And the caption is, Obama said he wanted to talk man to man about this, and I said, okay, put Michelle on the phone. But then again, there's Valerie Jarrett's sense of humor. Valerie Jarrett says Obama's White House is scandal-free. This is the same Valerie Jarrett that wanted the United States police forces to come under the authority of the United Nations Strong Cities Initiative. Is she also talking about the same Obama who contravened Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution by propping himself up as the head of the United Nations back in 2009? And what about his involvement in Sandy Hook, Osama bin Laden, that debacle? Yeah. How about Libya? How about the gun running from Libya? How about Benghazi? How about him knowing in advance that there was going to be an attack in the Benghazi embassy and doing nothing about it after Ambassador Stevens had requested no less than 600 times for backup? And I guess he's also forgotten Fast and Furious, the Iran ransom deal, the IRS targeting conservatives, his training of ISIL, never mind his signing the unconstitutional executive orders. What about that $1.7 billion to Iran? How about his role in Hillary's email server? He knew all along Hillary was using a private email server in her basement, unsecured. How about his role in the DNC collusion with the mainstream media? How about his fake birth certificate? How about his signing the infamous NDAA 2017, which now creates a Ministry of Truth? How about his disastrous Obamacare, where now insurance premiums are doubling or tripling in some states? Remember his famous line, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan? And he said it with such panache, with that famous smile of his. Silky smooth con man. How about his giving cover to Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Loretta Lynch, the two paragons of malfeasance and obstruction of justice? Yeah, Barry, we know. It's okay with you if the DNC stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders. It's okay with you if Loretta Lynch cut a deal with Bill Clinton to indemnify him and his corrupt Clinton Foundation. And how do you put a price tag on the Islamic blowback? Why do Islam radicals hate the United States, you might ask? Well, could it be because we destroyed Iraq? Maybe we killed 500,000 children in Iraq. Their country's a mess. Then there's Libya. That country is now a basket case. Obama also tried to fund the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. That failed. Then there's Syria. You think maybe, just maybe, some of these people who saw U.S. weapons and U.S. trained ISIL forces destroy their homes, do you think that they just may have some animosity towards the United States? Problem is, we cannot sometimes put ourselves in these people's shoes. What if they did it to us? What would we do to them? Benjamin Fulford had this to say, and again, with Benjamin, you have to take everything with a grain of salt because you never know. You never know what his sources are. He says, in the United States, the arrest of over 15,000 Khazarian mobsters by the FBI already began January 1st. The perpetrators of 9/11, the illegal Iraq invasion, the Fukushima tsunami, and nuclear terror attacks on Japan and other crimes against humanity are being rounded up, and there will be public disclosure about this in all major mass media. White Dragon sources promise. Well, we shall see. We shall see. Let's hope for the best. Maybe humanity will be freed after all, and maybe the pyramid will be inverted. We'll have the elite at the bottom and the people at the top. Let's talk about Israel for a minute here. UN Resolution 2334. The Israeli opposition suggests there be a referendum that will call for the annexation of the West Bank. And the Iranian Revolutionary Guard said, continued settlement construction will lead to Israel's demise. Fatah, Hamas, they pledge more violence against Israel. And that's the 2-minute timer going off right now as we speak. Some of the verbiage in the Security Council resolution is interesting to look at. One clause says, the resolution reaffirms that the establishment by Israel of settlements in the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967, including East Jerusalem, has no legal validity and constitutes a flagrant violation under international law and a major obstacle to the achievement of the two-state solution of a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace. It reiterates its demand that Israel immediately and completely cease all settlement activities in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem, and that it fully respect all of its legal obligation in this regard. Stresses that the cessation of all Israeli settlement activities is essential for salvaging the two-state solution and calls for affirmative steps to be taken immediately to reverse the negative trends on the ground that are imperiling the two-state solution, and so on and so forth. Time is no longer on Israel's side. The 2-minute timer has been activated. Whether it'll be 2 months, 2 years, it's hard to tell. But it seems to me that after 50 years of trying to resolve this issue, the Arab world is not going to wait around much longer. Certainly Iran isn't, when it also wants to usher in the last Mufti after a final cataclysmic world war. And this resolution, by some accounts, forms the legal basis for an international criminal court inquiry to prosecute Israel for population transfers, illegal settlements. In other news, Venezuelans are fleeing to Brazil for medical care, and they are overwhelming its hospitals, its morgues. And also, in Saudi Arabia, a large number of Saudi princes are fleeing for fear they will be assassinated. There's internal strife. The chickens are coming home to roost. In the national scene, John Bolton said that if the sanctions are meant to deter Russia, then the United States must make the Russians feel pain. And aren't we glad that John Bolton is not the Secretary of State? In other news, with a stroke of the pen, Obama has unilaterally declared vast swaths of land in Utah and Nevada as 2 new national monuments, thus putting them under control of the federal government. And startlingly, surprisingly, the area in Nevada includes the site of the infamous Bundy Ranch standoff, as well as land very close to the Bundy Ranch itself. What's under that land? Possibly uranium? Follow the money. It's all about the money. Here's some interesting news from John McCain. He said, when you attack a country, it's an act of war. And so we have to make sure that there's a price to pay so that we can perhaps persuade Russians to stop this kind of attacks on our very fundamentals of democracy. He is beating those war drums. Him and Lindsey Graham, the rabid dogs of war. In California, how is this for the slippery slope getting slipperier? California just legalized paid sex for minors, that is, people under 18 years old. Who voted for that? Why wasn't that put to a referendum? Then Obama unleashes 3,853 regulations, 18 for every law, adding another $6 billion to the budget. Let's take a look here at the refugee issue. 98.8% of them are Muslims. That's 15,302. Of those Muslims, 29 are Shia, and 15,134 are Sunnis, and 139 are other. 125 of them, of the refugees, are Christians. 32 Catholics, 32 Orthodox, 5 Protestants, 4 Jehovah's Witnesses, and another 52 describing themselves as simply Christian. 43 refugees are Yazidis, and 8 others are other religion of no description. And we're told we're only getting the best, but 1,565 of these refugees are diagnosed with active tuberculosis. And does anybody realize that 90,000 Christians were killed in 2016, making Christianity the most persecuted religion? And Mr. Obama is supposed to give his farewell speech in Chicago, where 3,932 people have been killed since he took office. What a legacy. In other news, a university literally named after George Washington and located in the nation's capital just dropped its requirement for American history for all its history majors. In order to graduate with a history degree now from George Washington University in Washington, D.C., you do not have to study American history. You tell me what's wrong with that picture. You tell me what is wrong with that picture. This is breaking new ground for the progressive left. That's what progress means. Doing away with traditions. Anything that is cast in stone is not progressive. No rules, of course, no rules. Only rules that suit them. For the liberal left, they have their own rules, like they want gender-segregated workspaces where no boys are allowed. These are not co-working spaces where both genders can mingle. My only question is, does that include girls' restrooms? And in another appalling factoid, in 2017, illegals will start collecting Social Security benefits. And then we have the announcement by James O'Keefe that many more videos will be coming out in 2017 to expose the waste, fraud, and abuse, and that he's building an army of journalists. And of course, George and Laura Bush, along with Jimmy and Rosalind Carter, as well as Hillary and Bill Clinton, will be attending Mr. Trump's inauguration. We now learn to make things look comfy, cozy, prim and proper, to give it a facade of normality. Who knows what is being hatched in the back rooms? In other news, Islamic groups, they are actively stockpiling weapons across the United States in anticipation. So much could happen between now and the inauguration. And this report came in from Dave Hodges. Drug cartels, HSBC, Obama, Soros, China, Mexican consulate, they're all in the same meeting. What could they have possibly talked about? There's also rumors that CalExit is on its way. California, after all, is the 6th largest economy in the world as a standalone economy. And the Independent California Party, as we already know, has opened up an embassy in Moscow. What's wrong with that picture? Mexico is now joining China in energy deals because Obama has choked off the oil supply to Mexico. And there are a lot of Chinese people in California, folks. And word is that the drug cartels are to attack white people in public gatherings to force CalExit. Mr. Trump tweeted, I will be having a general news conference on January 11th in New York City. He also tweeted that the intelligence briefing on the so-called Russian hacking was delayed until Friday. That would be tomorrow. Perhaps more time is needed to build a case. Very strange exclamation mark, he tweeted. And now, time for some comic relief. I would like to penetrate the depths of Joe Biden's unfathomable, prescient, logical, eloquent mind. At times he comes across like Mr. Spock on Star Trek. There's no statement that has captured his cerebral acumen, his capacity to think rationally, than when he made this comment after he was watching one of Trump's rallies where 20,000 people were packed in the arena. I give you now Joe Biden's immortal words. He said, and I would like you to take a few seconds here so you can be seated for this. He said, son of a gun, we may lose this election. I kid you not. And that's just from watching one rally. Imagine what he would have said if he watched all of them. Now, let's get back to ground zero here. Who stands to lose the most in this election? Here are the usual suspects: Soros, China, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and all those behind 9/11. And of all these, I would say that the principal that has the most to lose in this election is China. Saudi Arabia, not so much. They have money to burn. They have inexhaustible oil reserves that will keep them in the black for centuries. Ditto for Qatar. Soros, he lost over $2 billion. Some of that went to fund Hillary and his political apparatus. And the rest consists of market losses because according to Newsmax, back in August of 2016, Soros bet $2 billion on the stock market collapsing. Yep. So he may have lost future revenues also when Trump dismantles the climate change hoax. There will be no more carbon tax derivatives to be traded in the open market, which could represent trillions of dollars in profits. But China was the biggest loser, because China is now not only facing fair trade deals with America once Trump gets in, but it has also lost the opportunity to rise as the world's preeminent superpower, because its horse Hillary, as per some CIA sources, would have stepped into the White House and triggered a world war with China, giving the win to China. That was her plan. Have you noticed that she was wearing a lot of Mao pantsuits during the campaign? Have you noticed that she has been communicating directly with the Chinese? See, the Clintons are political agnostic drifters. They do not care where the money comes from, as long as the money comes to them. Now, a little diversion here. We're going to discuss maybe Pizzagate. Not too much, because it just sickens me to talk about it. But it becomes more and more apparent that both the left and the right have been co-opted, compromised, blackmailed, in other words, by the Pizzagate network. There is a website you can check that talks extensively about the latest Pizzagate developments. And that's Jeff Renz's website. It's rense.com, rense.com. And if you scroll down towards the right, the bottom right, you will see a whole section of Pizzagate links. You know, the Pentagon has a dedicated remote viewing department. These are people that are gifted. They have the ability to perceive things, to see not only the future, but also how current events are unfolding. In ancient times, those with that kind of ability, that kind of gift, were called seers or prophets. And some of them saw our days, our latter days. I won't get into the nitty-gritty, but if you're ever interested in how this kabuki theater of intelligence, counterintelligence, controlled opposition is going to end, especially with Israel, and especially with the Church of Satan, or the Mother of Abominations. You can check Ezekiel, Joel, Zechariah, Obadiah, but you can also check the Book of Mormon, and in particular, the first book of Nephi, chapter 22. It's fascinating reading. There's other writings about this topic, of course, in the book of Revelations, but I think none are more robust and cogent as those in the Book of Mormon. So let's get back to the inverted pyramid theme. Why is this symbol so important? See, Lucifer's ambition, his end game, is to dethrone God. He wants to sit on God's throne. He wants to be the Almighty. But God's end game is the complete opposite of Lucifer's. See, the glory of God, or his purpose, his reason for being God, is to bring to pass the immortality and the eternal life of mankind. Let's think about this for a minute. What does that mean? It means that this omnipotent, omniscient being that has a supernal love for the quadrillion of us lesser sentient beings has in mind to elevate us, to uplift us, to ascend us to a higher level of peace, happiness, freedom. And his plan entails that we go through a mortal existence here on earth. Our existence started long before we came here on earth and will continue long after we depart from this planet. And so his purposes are to bring the masses to the top by using the powerful, the informed at the bottom, to push us upwards. This is the inverted pyramid. The perfect example of that is when an all-powerful God would descend to a mortal state and walk on water, raise the dead, pay the price for our sins by dying an indescribable, horrendous death. A God that has nothing but altruistic motives. To have him come down and do that for humanity. The antithesis is the pyramid that is standing right side up, where the masses at the bottom are at the mercy of the elite at the top, who have enslaved, confined, duped, and even sacrificed the masses in the name of making the few at the top more powerful. See, I'm not the brightest bulb in the room, but occasionally I get flashes of insight. One of those moments was when this idea just appeared out of nowhere. That there is no greatness without humility. We can all understand that, the importance of being humble. And then with that is this other condition that no humility is possible without greatness. So let's toy with that idea for a minute. There is no greatness without humility. That's very logical. It's understood. We naturally gravitate to people who are humble, low-key, self-effacing. Of course, it's very easy to be humble when one is subjected to trials and deprivations. It's very hard to be humble when we have it all, when we are soaring at the top of our game. I've been there. It's very hard. It's unbelievably hard to be humble when one is wealthy and powerful. And we look at people who are humble and wealthy and we admire them. And one such person is Donald Trump. I don't know how he does it, frankly. I don't know. I really don't know. It's beyond me. I can place myself in the low million, stratosphere, but to be in the billions, I wouldn't even know what to think if I was a billionaire. I don't know how I would act. I don't know how I would act, conduct myself, how I would speak in public, what I would say. It is an enormous weight. I know if I was in his shoes, I would be probably tempted to mouth off, show off, lay it on thick. I mean, I do that sometimes anyway. So there is no humility without greatness. So what kind of pyramid would you like to be a part of? The inverted pyramid or the one we have now? The one that is right side up with the elite at the top and the masses at the bottom. The 99% and the 1% at the top. Or would you rather have the 1% at the bottom helping the 99% push us up to the top? It really doesn't matter which pyramid you want to be on, because the pyramid is slowly inverting. Can you hear it creaking? Can you hear the elite at the top figuring it out, that we have figured it out? The more we seek the truth, the more the truth seeps through the cracks of the corrupted, cankered, cancerous, crippled, cantankerous, crumbling pyramid, the faster it will flip over until the elite are at the bottom and the masses are at the top. Until we have the proper alignment between those who have the most and those who have the least. Empower the people. Give the people their due. Give them a break. Free the people's potential. Give them opportunities, and they will make more of themselves than they ever could with any kind of handout. So that they may fulfill their God-given potential, that they may fill the measure of their creation, that they may become what they could not possibly have imagined. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, the Do Not Call party is a dinosaur. Because it has stayed in power as long as people have been deprived of their opportunities, as long as people have been in despair, as long as they have been in the plantations, the DNC has been in power. So if you haven't already seen or read my little booklet, Millennial America, Reinventing Democracy, you can download it free by going to myamerica.win. So God bless America. God bless President Trump.